They thought this orangutan was sick, but 3 days later they realized she was protecting this. The heavy, humid promise of rain hung low over the canopy, a suffocating blanket of moisture that seemed to press the very breath out of the Bornean jungle. Beneath the emerald ceiling, in a secluded corner of the sanctuary's quarantine enclosure, an eerie silence had taken root, replacing the usual symphony of cicadas and rustling leaves. Maya, a 30-year-old female orangutan, known for her boisterous greetings and gentle, inquisitive nature, had transformed into an unrecognizable statue of misery. Her magnificent sunset-colored fur, usually a vibrant blaze of copper and gold that caught the dappled sunlight, was now matted and dark with a cold sweat, clinging tightly to her trembling frame. She was curled into a tight, impenetrable ball, her long, leathery arms wrapped fiercely around her own abdomen, her knees drawn up to her chest in a posture that screamed of profound, agonizing distress. The acidic scent of pain and fear seemed to radiate from her, a sharp, metallic odor that cut through the sweet, decaying fragrance of wet earth and the rotting mangoes scattered untouched by her feet. For 48 hours, she had refused water, ignored the sweet papaya she usually devoured, and turned her back on the world, her dark, deeply expressive eyes squeezed shut against an environment she suddenly seemed to fear. This was a creature renowned for her maternal warmth and social brilliance, a matriarch who usually approached human caretakers with an open, trusting palm and a soft, rumbling purr. Yet now, if anyone approached the steel mesh of her enclosure, she would bare her teeth in a silent, trembling grimace, rocking back and forth in the gathering shadows of the impending storm. It was a behavior that defied every natural instinct she possessed, a sudden, violent severing of the profound trust she had built with her human guardians. The sanctuary staff were paralyzed by a creeping dread, convinced they were watching the slow, agonizing end of a beloved friend. Entirely unaware of the astonishing, heart-breaking miracle she was fiercely guarding in the dark. Before we delve deeper into the astonishing truth behind Maya's mysterious decline and the revelation that would leave the sanctuary staff in tears, we want to gently welcome you into our global community of animal lovers. If stories of incredible animal intuition, unspoken bonds, and the deep emotional lives of our wild counterparts resonate with your soul, please take a moment to gently tap that like button and subscribe to the channel, turning on notifications so you never miss a journey into the language of the heart. We are building a sanctuary of our own right here in the comments section, and we would absolutely love to know where in the world you are tuning in from today. Drop a comment below with your city, your country, and the exact local time you are watching this video, and let us weave a vibrant tapestry of connection across the globe as we return to the humid, suspenseful air of the Bornean rainforest. To truly understand the chilling gravity of Maya's sudden deterioration, one must first step into the vibrant, sensory-rich world she had inhabited for over a decade, and deeply comprehend the extraordinary bond she shared with Dr. Eris, the sanctuary's lead primatologist. The sanctuary itself was a sprawling oasis carved from the edge of a mercilessly encroaching palm oil plantation, a final refuge where the air was eternally thick with the scent of blooming wild orchids, damp moss, and the musky ancient aroma of the great apes. Maya was a survivor, rescued 15 years prior from the smoldering ash of a deforested tract, her lungs permanently scarred by smoke, her spirit fractured by the deafening roar of chainsaws. Over the years, under the golden, slanted light of countless jungle evenings, Dr. Eris had meticulously rebuilt her shattered trust. He remembered the exact texture of her rough, calloused fingers, fingers as strong as industrial vice grips, yet capable of breathtaking gentleness, The very first time she reached through the enclosure bars to meticulously groom the hairs on his forearm. Their bond was an unspoken language composed of soft grunts, shared glances, and a profound, silent empathy that bridged the immense evolutionary gap between them. Maya was highly attuned to the emotional weather of the sanctuary. She was known to comfort younger orphaned orangutans, wrapping her massive warm arms around them when the distant thunderstorms rolled in, carrying the sharp, static smell of ozone. The caretakers relied on her as a surrogate mother, a pillar of immense emotional stability whose deep, slow breathing could instantly calm a panicked juvenile. She was the very heart of the enclosure, her sunset-colored fur a beacon of resilience against the emerald green of the foliage. The sunlight would catch the copper strands on her broad shoulders as she swung effortlessly through the ropes and branches, a master of her domain, radiating health and quiet joy. This history, this deeply ingrained foundation of unconditional love and vibrant health, was precisely what made her sudden descent into a huddled defensive shell so utterly terrifying. The trust that had taken 15 years to cultivate had vanished overnight, replaced by a defensive wall so dense it felt physical. The vibrant, socially complex matriarch had retreated into a dark, silent void, leaving Dr. Eris and his dedicated team staring at a terrifying mystery. The heavy atmosphere of the jungle suddenly feeling less like a lush refuge and far more like a waiting tomb. As the agonizing hours bled into days, the situation inside the medical quarantine enclosure deteriorated from deeply concerning to catastrophically desperate. The oppressive jungle heat seemed to mock the chilling reality unfolding on the cold concrete floor. By the afternoon of the second day, the vibrant luster of Maya's fur had entirely faded, leaving it dull, brittle, and caked with dried mud and the sticky residue of her own feverish sweat. The clinical signs were a chaotic, terrifying puzzle that simply refused to resolve into a logical medical diagnosis. Dr. Eris and the sanctuary's veterinary team watched, their stomachs tied in painful knots of anxiety, as Maya's breathing grew incredibly shallow, a ragged, uneven rasp that echoed eerily against the tiled walls of the clinic. The air inside the observation room was thick with the sterile, sharp scent of antiseptic and the acidic, primal pheromones of an animal in sheer terror. Every single attempt to safely sedate her for an abdominal ultrasound or a crucial blood draw was met with a terrifying, desperate resistance. If a blow dart was even raised in her peripheral vision, Maya would let out a guttural, heartbreaking shriek, violently curling her massive body even tighter around her chest, tucking her chin down so fiercely it seemed she was trying to crush her own sternum to protect whatever fragile organs lay beneath. She was actively starving herself, her dark eyes sinking deep into their sockets, taking on a hollow, haunted glaze of profound exhaustion. The veterinary experts debated furiously in hushed, panicked whispers outside her cage, the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lighting of the hallway casting long, grim shadows on their exhausted, tear-streaked faces. Was it an acute internal rupture? A twisted bowel? A sudden, catastrophic heart defect causing unimaginable chest pain? The sheer physical toll of maintaining such a rigid, fiercely tense posture for 48 consecutive hours was beginning to visibly shut down her muscular and renal systems. Dr. Eris spent the entire second night sitting directly on the cold concrete outside her heavy steel bars, the rough texture of the wall pressing uncomfortably against his aching back, listening to the relentless drumming of a tropical downpour against the tin roof above. The smell of the wet jungle outside mingled intimately with the metallic scent of his own fear and helplessness. He spoke to her in soft, pleading tones, utilizing the specific vocalizations of comfort and reassurance they had shared for a decade. But Maya only shivered violently. A massive, muscular creature reduced to a trembling leaf in a hurricane. She was fading, slipping away into the dark, and the crushing realization that they were entirely powerless to stop it settled over the sanctuary like a suffocating shroud. They were watching a complete failure of modern veterinary medicine, utterly blocked by an impenetrable wall of animal will, and the tragic, unavoidable end seemed only hours away. The dawn of the third day broke with an eerie, bruised purple sky, the jungle holding its breath before the inevitable release of another massive squall. Inside the quarantine room, the atmosphere was fraught with a heavy, suffocating sense of finality. Dr. Aris, his eyes deeply bloodshot and his hands trembling slightly from pure exhaustion and sorrow, decided to attempt one last, desperate measure. Bypassing all standard clinical safety protocols, he unlocked the heavy steel door of the enclosure and stepped inside. He carried absolutely no medical equipment, no darts, no cold stethoscopes, only a handful of the sweet, overripe rambutan fruit she used to adore, their spiky red skins damp with the morning humidity. He moved with agonizing slowness, dropping to his knees on the rough straw-strewn floor, the earthy smell of damp hay and Maya's feverish sweat immediately filling his lungs. He deliberately avoided making direct eye contact, adopting a posture of total vulnerable submission, gently sliding the fruit across the floor until it rested against her knuckles. For 20 excruciating minutes, the world stood still. There was only the sound of Maya's ragged, wet breathing and the distant, ominous rumble of thunder vibrating through the floorboards. Then, an incredible shift occurred, a subtle, almost imperceptible softening in the rigid, stone-like line of Maya's broad shoulders. She let out a soft, highly pitched whimper, a sound of profound emotional exhaustion rather than physical aggression. Slowly, millimeter by agonizing millimeter, the immense, lock-jawed tension in her forearms began to slacken. Dr. Aris held his breath, his heart hammering wildly against his ribs, as Maya suddenly shifted her weight, uncurling her right arm just a fraction of an inch from her chest. The dim, gray light of the stormy morning filtered gently through the high windows, briefly illuminating the dark, warm cavern between her massive torso and her thick thighs. And then, Dr. Aris saw it. It was not a malignant tumor. It was not a gaping, infected wound. It was a tiny, rhythmic pulse of life. Nestled incredibly deep within the coarse, sunset-colored hair of Maya's chest, completely engulfed and protected by the immense warmth of her body, lay a fragile, shivering bundle of mottled gray and black fur. It was a newborn jungle cat, a tiny, impossibly vulnerable clouded leopard cub, its eyes still tightly sealed shut, its incredibly fragile ribs rising and falling in perfect, desperate time with Maya's own heartbeat. The stunning reality hit Dr. Aris with the force of a physical blow, literally stealing the breath from his lungs. Maya was not sick. She was not dying of an internal rupture or a twisted bowel. She was suffering from the sheer, agonizing physical exhaustion of becoming a living, breathing incubator. The helpless cub must have fallen from the high canopy above her outdoor enclosure during the brutal first storm. A tiny, freezing creature doomed to die in the unforgiving mud. Maya, driven by an empathy so profound and instantaneous it defied every logical boundary of her species, had scooped the apex predator's infant from the cold ground. She had stopped eating, stopped drinking, and curled herself into an agonizing, self-destructive knot of protective muscle, solely to generate enough body heat to keep the tiny alien creature alive. She was willingly sacrificing her own body, enduring the terrifying approach of humans with medical equipment and the burning hollow ache of starvation, simply to fiercely protect a life that was not her own. The sharp, acidic scent of pain in the room was suddenly, miraculously washed away by the overwhelming, almost palpable aura of a mother's fierce, transcendent love. The very moment the beautiful truth was laid bare, the tense, suffocating atmosphere within the concrete walls shattered entirely, instantly replaced by a profound, reverent stillness. Tears streamed freely and unashamedly down Dr. Eris's face, tracing the exhausted lines of his cheeks as he slowly reached out, not to take the fragile cub away, but to gently lay his hand over Maya's massive, trembling knuckles. The texture of her leathery skin was cold and clammy, but as his warm fingers made contact, a deep, resonant rumble vibrated from deep within Maya's chest. It was the rich, rumbling purr of a mother who finally realized her precious secret was safe. The healing process began in that room not with intravenous medicine or sedatives, but with an immense, shared sigh of emotional relief. Slowly, cautiously, Maya uncurled the rest of her aching body, her stiff, locked joints popping audibly in the quiet room. She tenderly cradled the tiny clouded leopard in one massive, calloused hand, revealing the incredibly delicate creature to the man she trusted most in the world. The visual contrast was absolutely breathtaking. The giant, incredibly powerful ape with fur like molten copper, and the tiny, slate-gray feline, small enough to fit comfortably within the palm of her hand. Dr. Eris slowly, carefully introduced a shallow bowl of warm, diluted goat's milk and a small plastic syringe. He didn't dare try to separate them. Instead, he sat shoulder to shoulder with the great ape, the comforting smell of sweet milk and the fresh ozone of the breaking storm outside, mingling beautifully in the humid air. As Dr. Eris carefully fed the tiny cub drop by precious drop, Maya watched with an intense, unwavering maternal focus, her dark eyes entirely stripped of their previous fear, replaced by a deep, soulful intelligence and overwhelming gratitude. For the very first time in 3 terrifying days, she accepted a piece of sweet, ripe fruit, chewing slowly as the much-needed sugar rushed back into her depleted, exhausted bloodstream. The most beautiful, poetic phenomenon occurred in the quiet hours that followed: synchronized breathing. As the deeply exhausted orangutan finally laid her massive, heavy head down on a pile of fresh, soft fleece blankets, the tiny leopard cub instinctively crawled right into the warm hollow of her neck, its tiny, wet nose buried securely in her coarse hair. Their chests rose and fell in perfect, harmonious rhythm, a mesmerizing ebb and flow of interconnected life. The rigid, terrifying tension that had locked Maya's body into a defensive statue of misery completely evaporated, her long limbs growing loose and heavy with a deeply earned sleep. The sanctuary clinic, once a sterile room of impending doom, had been miraculously transformed into a sacred space, a warm, softly lit sanctuary where the harsh boundaries between predator and prey, ape and feline, human and animal were entirely dissolved by the universal, unspoken language of care. This extraordinary event, an event that would be whispered about in awe by the sanctuary staff for years to come, stands as a monumental testament to the profound, so frequently unrecognized emotional landscapes inhabited by the animals we share this fragile earth with. When we observe the natural world, we are so often conditioned to see it through the harsh clinical lens of survival of the fittest, a brutal, unyielding calculus of predator and prey, of genetic preservation and utterly selfish instinct. Yet Maya's breathtaking, near-fatal sacrifice tears that clinical cold blueprint to shreds. It forces us to confront a far more beautiful, staggering reality that empathy is not a uniquely human invention, nor is it a luxury reserved only for our species. The sixth sense of love, the innate visceral drive to protect the infinitely vulnerable, even at catastrophic, terrifying cost to oneself, pulses just as fiercely beneath a coat of sunset-colored fur as it does beneath human skin. Maya looked down at a tiny, freezing creature of an entirely different species. A creature that, if it survived, would one day grow to become a formidable instinctual predator of the jungle canopy. And she did not see a future threat, nor did she see a biological irrelevance. She saw only a fragile spark of life begging silently not to be extinguished in the cold rain. Her profound, ancient intelligence allowed her to calculate exactly what the dying cub desperately needed: intense body heat, absolute darkness, and unbroken stillness, and her immense, boundless heart provided the iron willpower to endure days of agonizing starvation and sheer terror to deliver it. This story asks us, begs us, to completely re-evaluate the profound depth of animal consciousness. It demands that we finally recognize the sophisticated, deeply emotional, and profoundly moral decisions these majestic creatures are capable of making. Decisions driven by a pure, unadulterated compassion that rivals, and perhaps in its sheer selflessness, even surpasses our own. Maya's quiet, agonizing heroism in the damp, shadowy corner of a concrete enclosure serves as a blindingly bright beacon, illuminating the profound, undeniable interconnectedness of all living things. It reminds us, in the most powerful way imaginable, that the greatest, most formidable force in the natural world is not the razor sharpness of a claw or the crushing strength of a jaw, but the boundless, sacrificial, and fiercely protective capacity of a mother's heart. As we gently leave Maya and her tiny, unexpected ward to rest in the warm, peaceful quiet of the sanctuary clinic, their synchronized breaths echoing a vital rhythm older than humanity itself, we are vividly reminded of the breathtaking capacity for love that exists in the wild, untamed corners of our world. If this incredible emotional journey into the heart of an orangutan has touched your spirit, moved you, and opened your eyes to the profound emotional depth of the animals we share our planet with, please honor Maya's incredible story by giving this video a like, subscribing to our channel, and sharing this beautiful testament to empathy with your friends and family. Your continued support is exactly what allows us to keep bringing these incredible, heartwarming stories from the shadows of the jungle into the light of the world. Now we turn to you, our wonderful, compassionate community. Have you ever personally witnessed a moment where an animal displayed an undeniable sixth sense of intuition, profound empathy, or protective love that completely defied logical explanation? Share your own extraordinary experiences in the comments section below, and let's continue to marvel together at the beautiful, enduring, and unspoken language of the heart.